In this episode of the B2B Marketing Asia podcast, UI UX expert Alex Hartan will be breaking down how to rebrand your company. He'll also be sharing real life case studies as well as frameworks. So stay tuned.
Hey, Alex, you actually redesigned my branding and my website. So I wanted to have you on the podcast to share a little bit behind the scenes. Before that, you developed a framework for successful branding called Rcg Framework. And I'd love to hear a bit more about that.
RCG very simply stands for relatable, consistent, and generous. So what does this mean exactly? So having a relatable brand means not being like this guy. He's talking about the technology of liters, about gigawatts. And I know this is interesting from his perspective and his technical team's perspective. But at the end of the day, nobody wants to know about technical jargon and this self-centered messaging because it does not say anything about the benefits that it ultimately brings in their lives and in their company. So instead, I suggest you do two things. Focus on the benefits instead of the features. Think about what is the ultimate value it brings in the lives of your prospects or your customers, and use their language. It's very difficult when you're in that space to think about their perspective. So that's why it's necessary to make that thought experiment and think about what's the language that they're using and how can you illustrate the benefits using their language. And this in turn will humanize your brand. It will make it a lot more relatable, and people will start thinking about your brand as a close friend rather than an entity in a cloud. So the first one is be relatable. Because your audience isn't interested in flux capacitors, they're interested in time travel. So time travel is the benefit, flux capacitor is the technology. The second one is be consistent. And consistent means first applying your branding consistently. So the colors should always be the same consistently. The typeface and the logo should be the same on every application of your brand. So this is a nice looking truck, but obviously the colors are not UPS's colors. The logo and the typeface of the slogans is not right. So being consistent helps leverage familiarity in the minds of your prospects or your customers. And being consistent also means showing up repeatedly, so they become familiar and accustomed to your style, your message, and your product. And this in turn will build relationships, and it will help you solidify your brand in the minds of your prospect. And at the end of the day, this creates trust between you and your customers or your prospects. And finally, you should give generously. You shouldn't hoard all your information. You should give as much as you can while protecting your IP. I'm not saying give everything away, but I'm saying give something away up front to gain the trust and show your audience that you're not hiding everything up under a paywall, and you are generous enough to give up front without expecting anything. And secondly, you should celebrate their wins. So instead of bragging on social media about your company's wins, you should celebrate the wins of your customers. And this way, you will become the go-to resource when they are in need of some, are looking for guidance, or when they are looking for a product that you're. And this is because if they win, you win. So just to recap, be relatable, be consistent, and give generously. A few months ago, I connected with Joe and he reached out and he was thinking about reimagining and updating the identity and the website of Escobedo. And we hit it off. And after a brand audit of Escobedo, we realized that there was a few things that were working well for him. The identity was bold. He had a strong established colors. The shape was becoming familiar in the minds of his audience. So how can we use these things that were working and improve them? Because were a few things that we could improve on, like the spacing was a little off, the typeface was inconsistent. We had 3 fonts in the logo, and it looked a little bit dated, especially the symbol. Instead of starting from scratch, we thought about how can we improve this and make it better while retaining the brand equity of the existing brand. After the discovery sessions and the workshops, we synthesized the 3 core elements that should describe Escomedia going forward. And these words were loud, cheeky, and maverick, so challenging the status. And using these and using the existing identity, we have developed the new identity for Escomedia. And this is just as bold, or you could say, the typeface and the spacing and everything works well with the symbol. We have developed an identity system and branding elements that work with the symbol, like the background, which was built from the logo. And I will show you in a minute. These are a couple of applications. The left one is typically used for print, since the layout is mostly square. The right one is used for things like websites where you don't have lots of vertical space, like website headers. And we have formalized all these findings into a brand style guide, which describes how the identity works in the real world. Part of this style guide is a description of the brand pattern. So if you look in the background, there are some stylized dots which represent the sound wave is actually built from the identity elements themselves. So when you intersect the E and the M of the logo, you get a dotted pattern. And we have expanded that element across the website and across all the materials as a branding element that reinforces the brand equity of. And here are some typical applications of the Escomedia branding in print form and the website. As you can see, there's a consistent application of Escomedia across all customer touchpoints. And with recent events, websites are the primary point for your customers, and if you don't mind, we can touch on the website as well. The G part of the framework, give generously and celebrating the wins of your audience. One of the things that we discussed early on is how can we celebrate the guests of the podcast and how can we put them in front, because at the end of the day, they are very much a part of Escomedia with their contribution and their generosity. So the first thing we thought about, how can we incorporate them into the website? And at the top of the website, in the hero section, we start off with an interactive, should we say, showcase gallery of the past guests of Escomedia.
Yeah.
And as you scroll, you will see that this is animating into, so the story is very much centered around the pain points and the aspirations of our audience. So instead of thinking of we are an established brand doing X and Y, we're thinking, how can we reach out to our audience and how can we bring some value? So this story starts with a pain point, a revelation, and then an aha moment. So you should focus on building relationships instead, and a call to action. Then we have social proof, which reinforces what we're doing and the actual tangible benefits from the perspective of the customer. And then we have the past episodes. More social proof being featured in these respectable publications is very important to reinforce social proof. And the featured content. And finally, a call to action and the opportunity to sign up for the newsletter to stay connected and stay up to date with the updates. So this is a very straightforward application, and it sounds simple, but it's very hard to understand how many people get this wrong, even though it's very simple. So focusing on the end customer, giving generously and being consistent, I think are the most important things when you're building your.
Absolutely. Alex, thanks so much for sharing that. I think many people love the design, not only the logo, but the website. And so that goes to you, that credit goes to you because, like I said, you were the mastermind behind it. I really appreciate it and sharing kind of the behind the scenes look in terms of the Esco Media look and feel. So really appreciate it, Alex.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. And I hope you have a wonderful day. And I hope this was helpful for your audience as well.
Absolutely. All right. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you in the next episode.